very pleased that I was invited to come here. I also feel a bit like an odd bird because I'm not a developer. I'm not into Java 9 and machine learning and quantum computing and everything that you were talking about. I'm more about the human aspects of technology. So for me, it's a social technical aspect that we need to consider. So I am a researcher, I'm associate professor in information systems at Luleå University of Technology. And for me, that means that I'm focusing on how we can involve end users and humans in the process of developing new digital innovations. I'm also the managing director of Botnia Living Lab, and I will tell you more about that. And I'm also vice president of the European Network of Living Labs. Has any one of you heard about the European Network of Living Labs? One person in the whole audience, 2, 3. Have you heard about Living Labs and what that is? A few, okay. Well, after today, you will be more into it and more knowledgeable in that area. So, I will start by giving you a short introduction of where I come from. I come from Sweden. Do we have any Swedes here then? Oh, a few. Hello, hello people. I come from Luleå. It's very close to the Arctic Circle. We are 120 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle, so it's not that very warm there. Today we actually had some snow. So it's starting now. We said, okay, now the winter is coming, for real. So this is Norrbotten, the region where I live, and we say that this is a region of contrasts because we have midnight sun during summertime. And do you know what midnight sun is? I mean, the sun doesn't go down at all. So when you're sleeping, you have the sun in your face. It's actually quite nice. But then we have the polar night during winter. And do you know what the polar night is? We don't see the sun at all. So you can say it's quite a contrast. We also have the highest mountain in the area. It's not that high, but at least it's the highest in Sweden. And we also have the deepest sea. So we're quite proud of this area. And we are also considered being one of the most innovative areas in Europe, actually. But we are not that, it's not a dense area. We are 2.5 persons per square kilometer. So we usually say that it's quite sparsely populated. But in some cities, I mean the city where I come from, we are over 70,000, so we are really a big city in the area. We are the largest one, so it's when it comes to people. The mean temperature in Luleå is 1.4 degrees plus, so we move between having winters when we have minus 40 and summers when we have approximately plus 25. I think the heat record in our region is plus 35. So it can be quite warm. And I think that the record for how cold it can be is actually minus 45. So it can be quite cold. So, but being in this area also makes people being more enthusiastic and entrepreneurial because we need to survive. We need to find ways of surviving. And we also need to find jobs for ourselves, and we need to find occupations. In the area in Norrbotten, it's the area in Sweden where we have the largest amount of unemployed people. Of course, we are not that many who can be unemployed, but that is not really part of the issue. We are really good at getting jobs for the ones who can work at least. So that was just giving you a background of the society that we want to build and the situation that we want to have in this region. So we want to develop what we call the smart society. We hear a lot about the smart cities and smart areas and smart regions. But for us, it's not only about being a smart city because we don't have so many cities. It's about having a smart society. And you know the smart society is dependent on the global aspects, the digitalization, but also the urbanization. Because we also have urbanization in these areas as well, because people from the more remote areas move into the cities. So you can drive for 100 kilometers in some parts of Sweden, and you don't even see a house where somebody's living. So it's quite not always that creative and positive view of this region, but we try to get by. When we talk about the society in general, we know that there are many challenges that we need to face now, and also the mayor was talking about that. I mean, we have the climate changes that we need to change. we have or need to handle somewhere, even though Trump is not really into the climate changes. But I think the rest of us is more kind of, yeah, they are here and they are real. And in our region where I live, we can actually see them quite, we can see, a lot of traces of it. The winters that you usually had a lot of snow, these days it's not as much snow as it used to be. The summers are getting colder than they used to be. So we can actually see the effects of the climate change quite rapidly in our region. We have, of course, the traffic situations, and we're talking about autonomous or advanced cars. And we also want to have that in our region. So we have a lot of testing going on, car testing. But we don't have these autonomous cars coming there or more automatic cars coming there to see if it works when it's snowing. Because I have a rather modern or rather new car. But it's not that fun to have a new car when you have a lot of snow on it. Because do you know what happens to the sensors when they're covered in snow? Every time you kind of slow down, it just beep, because they're warning you that someone is in the way. But it's not, it's just snow. So I think it would be good if also the car manufacturers would come to this area and also to see, okay, how does it really work when we have a lot of snow that we need to take care of as well. But the society as such is also having these issues with the population and the growth of the population these days. We have problems with how we can supply for water and how we can manage the waste, and this is not for our region, this is for the society on a global scale. So these are the issues that a smart society really needs to handle and know how to grapple with. And of course, they also need to make sure that they provide quality for their citizens. So how can we then define the smart city or smart society? Well, a previously published research paper, they said that, okay, a smart society is one where digital technology is thoughtfully deployed by government and can improve on 3 broad outcomes. So they are focusing on the outcome, not the output. And what is the difference? Yeah, when we look at the outcome, it's actually the effects of what we're trying to implement that are in the focus. So they say we want to increase the well-being of citizens. We should also strengthen the economy and increase the effectiveness of the institutions. So this is what the smart society should focus on. But when I've been looking at the smart society, I also see that there are 4 different dimensions that needs to work together when we look at it. And at this picture, of course, we don't see a really populated society there. But it still has these dimensions. We have the technology. They have cameras on their helmet where they can track how they are driving their snowmobiles. We have the technology in terms of internet connection. We have 4G in this area. We have the physical context where we are. We are in the mountains. We are there driving snowmobiles. But we also have the social context because we want to interact with each other. Where should we go? How can we feel safe when we are in this area and in this physical environment? And of course, it's also a political dimension to it. In Sweden, we are allowed to drive snowmobiles in the mountains. But in some areas, in some countries, we are not. So we always have the political, the physical, the social, and the technical who should interact for us in order to be able to develop the smart society. But then when we talk about smart, we also talk about the digitalization. And I was surprised that none of you really knew what the digitalization was. I'm just kidding. But what we usually do is that we kind of combine everything together and we say, okay, now we are doing the digitalization. But there is a difference. We have been talking about digitization. Making analog material into binary code, and I guess that is what many of you are doing. I guess you're also working a lot with the digitalization. How we develop processes that can help us work with this digital material that we have. So these 2 come together. But now we see that our society is in digital transformation. And when we talk about digital transformation, we are talking about the effects of the digitalization. What are the outcomes of the digitalization and how does it impact our everyday processes, our everyday activities that we want to do? And today I'm feeling, okay, digitalization is starting to become a quite overused concept to some extent. We say everything that has some kind of computer or smartphone related to it is somehow digitalization. Well, in the continuation of my speech today, I will also talk about the human aspects, and I will talk about it from the individual perspective. And I guess, many of you have experienced it yourself, and many of you have been in contact with it or somehow exposed to these effects that I will talk about. But I want us also to start think, and to start consider, and to start reflecting. So that is what I want us to do. So when we talk about the digitalization, we can see that the digital transformation is causing a lot of unintended consequences on many different levels. We have the individual level, the organizational level, and the societal level. But we also know that a lot of us are also focusing on developing the technology. And we are not considering what is the needs of people, or what is the value that I want to create by developing this technology. We talk a lot about this technology-driven society, even about technological determinism, that the technology itself decides where we should go, and we are just in the hands of the technology. Would you agree? Are we in the hands of the technology, or are we still in the driving seat? What do you feel? Are we in the driving seat? Hands up. Oh, you feel you are. Oh, it was not that many. So you think that we are now in the hands of technology, I guess. Little bit worrying, especially since you are developers. So if we then look at it from a social aspect or from an individual aspect, we can see that, okay, the social life that we have today is very highly impacted by the use of digital technologies. We have a lot of social contacts. We have many friends on LinkedIn. We have many friends on Facebook and in all kinds of social networks. We connect and we socialize. But we also see that people feel more alone than ever before. We also see that when we socialize in a room, we usually sit with our smartphone. We're also in the era of sharing. We want to share what have we been doing on Instagram and Snapchat and all these kinds of places. But that's also giving, some people get really, really stressed by this sharing. Oh, I can't put up this picture because no one will like it. And if no one likes it, I feel ignored. And when I feel ignored, I also become less eager of sharing in the future. So we know that people are not really that willing to share, but we do it anyhow, and we sometimes feel a little bit stressed about it. We are also changing our behavior to become more on demand. We are looking at TV on demand. We are driving cars soon on demand, or renting a car on demand. With Uber, we are moving in that direction. So we are more and more doing this on demand. We are getting worse and worse on planning, because we are more eager on just living to live by the day and not having so much things planned. Not in our professional life, of course we need to plan there. I guess most of us have a calendar that is quite fully booked. But in our personal and private life, we are not that eager on planning. We want to keep it open. We can also see that we are living now in a safer society. And when I say safer society, we can see that we have more surveillance than we have ever had before. Big Brother is always watching us. No, not really, not yet. But we also get better diagnosis. We have more access to doctors. We can have a doctor online, for instance, so I can get immediate response if I have something, if I'm sick in some way. So we can also feel safer, both from a physical aspect, but also from a more mental aspect. We are saving lives as well. With this more autonomous or automatic or advanced driving, of course we are saving lives, and that is also very, very important, because that is one of the things and one of the outputs or outcomes that we want to achieve. We are also becoming more efficient. Or are we becoming more efficient? I'm not so sure. We can do the bank errands whenever we want, and we can get in contact with people whenever we want, and we can apply for daycare centers or whatever we want, whenever we want to. But are we becoming more efficient? Are the work tasks and the tasks we do every day, Are they more efficient today than they were a few years ago? I'm not so sure. There is also a new concept that is popping up that is called the on-life and on-life privacy. So we are talking about the online life, but it's now the on-life because we're always on. We never turn it off. We are constantly using our devices. We are constantly being exposed to these devices. So we have an on-life and the on-life privacy. Or do we have a privacy, really? I'm not so sure about that either. And then we have the scoring. And I think this part with the scoring is actually something that I'm starting to become a bit nervous about it. Because we are scoring everything. We are rating if we have, the taxi the driver at Uber, he was really good, and the restaurant was really nice, and the hotel was really good, or perhaps not so good sometimes, and so forth. And we continue doing this. But we are also being scored. We are also being judged by the social impact, the social media impact that we have, the online impact that we have. We have a scoring for our credibility. And this is something that we know it will increase because as the more data we get about people, of course we will be more interested in knowing, okay, who is this person and can I trust that he will actually pay his bills or her bills? So this scoring is something that I think we should perhaps be a little bit afraid of. Today we are looking at the screen approximately 10 hours per day. And I see that some of you are doing it even though I'm speaking. Thank you. But that is what my point. We are using these interactive technologies, but we are not really interacting. We can sit in a room, as I said before, we can sit in a room and just using these devices. We know today that it's more difficult for children to connect with their parents because their parents have one thing between them and their kids. We know that a lot of accidents with children when they are in the playground happens before the parents have been looking on their mobile phone while they were there. But not us. I mean, we would never do that, and it has never happened to me. Thankfully, my children are quite big now, so they have survived. But I think we need to consider, are we connected or are we disconnected? Are we connecting to people, or are we more disconnected? Should we put the smartphone in our foreheads just to have the sense that someone is actually talking to us? I read a research paper that had the explanation of why we are so eager on being in the phone. And it has to do with our rewarding system. Because when we use the phone, it's almost like using drugs or drinking alcohol. It triggers the same rewarding system because we get immediate feedback. I'm looking for something and then I can find it. I'm trying to accomplish a task and I can do it. So we get these immediate responses and immediate rewards, which makes it very hard for us to put it aside because we know that if we pick it up, it will answer directly and it will give me the responses that I'm looking for. And that makes it hard for us to stay disconnected and to not being online. Eric Pickersgill, he made a photo series where he wanted us to highlight the situations in life where we actually use the mobile phone when we should be focusing on other stuff. And he wanted to do this because he wanted us to start reflecting. These two persons are newlywed. And what he was doing is that, okay, he saw them having the mobile phones in their hand. And then he asked them to remove it, but keeping the same, to have the same gesture. And he has done that in a lot of pictures, so this is one. This is one of himself and his wife. And when he saw this picture, and I guess this is also something that none of us would do. I mean, we have never been lying in bed and looking at Netflix series or checking news or the Trump tweets or whatever it is. But what they did when they saw this picture, first of all, they thought, okay, this is really, really sad because we can feel that we are not connected here. We are not related to each other. So what they decided here was that, okay, we will try to put away the phone. When we go to bed, we will not have the phones with us. And when they watch a movie at home, they will not have the phones. And when they go to a dinner in a restaurant, they leave the phones in the cars. And the effect, as he said, is that after 3 months of being a little bit less online, he feels more connected to his wife than he has ever done before. He feels that now we are building a relationship that they have not been able to build for 5 years, that they have accomplished in 3 months. We can also see children playing together or alongside each other, a very nice vacation experience, or a nice family dinner. So how does these photos make you feel? Do you feel that, okay, perhaps I'm also doing the same thing? Perhaps this is also something that you could think of and consider in your everyday practice or in your everyday life. Because I think we need to start thinking of, is this the way we want to live? Do we want to live in the smartphone? Do we want to be there and not really being there? Do we want to miss our child when they do their first score in football because we were so eager on updating LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever? Do we want to miss out on all these opportunities? Do we want to go to a rock concert and having the phone more than us being there and being in the moment and listening, but being more focused on recording the whole event than actually taking part of it? Or do we want to be the mom that is sitting in the playground, or the father that is sitting in the playground when our child is in the swinger and not feeling very happy at all? Is this what we want to do? Or do we want to connect with each other? Or do we want to take selfies at all? 28 persons this year has died because they have been taking a selfie. I mean, it's really, how far can it go? It's actually more dangerous to take a selfie than being attacked by sharks. I mean, it's more likely that you will die from a selfie than by a shark attack. Some die from a shark attack while taking a selfie as well. And that is also really, not so good. The guy hanging out from the window in the airplane, there is actually, perhaps that picture is somehow made up. But it has actually happened. A guy was driving a Cessna, and he was out from the window taking a picture or selfie, and then he crashed because he lost control of the airplane. I mean, come on, what are we doing? What? Yeah, perhaps it is. We are strengthening, it's survival of the fittest. We can also see warning signs coming up where the mobile zombies are taking over. The mobile zombies are the ones, we know them, walking around with the mobile phones, causing a lot of cycle accidents and pedestrian accidents. Actually, in 85% of these accidents, there is a mobile phone included. So we need to pay attention. In some cities, they've actually developed these pedestrian walks so that we can walk, okay, this is for the zombie area, and these are for these ordinary citizens. And you work on your own risk in the zombie area. We also have traffic lights now, because we have this head down, And it's true. This is true. We are developing it. It's in the Netherlands and in Sydney. They're developing these traffic lights because we don't keep our heads up. We have the head down, and then we are ran over. So it's true. But we also see situations where we are so eager on filming and taking photographs that we actually are also in the way for the police and the ambulance when they should save lives. People are in the way, they're getting into the ambulance because they want to get a picture of the person who is injured or sick. So the ambulance staff has to shove them out and push them out. Get out, we need to go. They have also seen that people are also more eager on taking these photographs than actually calling 911. But of course, we also have more crimes that are being solved because we have so much more evidence today than we used to have a few years ago. So there are good and bad with all these aspects. But I think the really ugly part is when we start being in the way of people who we need to take care of. Otherwise, they will die. Another ugly thing, I think, with the things that we're doing now when it comes to this filming and posting and all these things, is when we start exposing people in the most embarrassing moment. When someone on the football field is feeling bad or something, and we start posting that and we start sharing that because it's the most embarrassing moment perhaps for this person, and we share it online, and we share it again, and we share it among friends, and we do it over and over again. So the embarrassment never stops. Today among young people, they are more eager on keeping their online life, more private and more secure, because they know that if I get bullied or if I make a fool out of myself online, it will never disappear. So it's more safe to be, in this kind of environment where we are more physically connected to each other, because it's only you who knows if I make a fool out of myself. But if we would broadcast it online, perhaps we do, I'm not sure. And if we're broadcasting it online, then it can be spread throughout the whole world, and it will never disappear. We know, with the new GDPR, we're saying, okay, the right to be deleted. Yeah, it would be very, very interesting to see how that will work in the future. But we also see that our work environment is also influenced by the digitalization. In Sweden, at least, and I guess this is, we are not better or worse than anyone else, 78% of the employees are using computers every day, and we use several channels at the same time. 45% of us use the computer half of our working day. And I guess in this audience, I would say you use the computer perhaps 100% of the working day and a few hours afterwards as well. So so I guess you are really, really online. And we know that when we have this online world, we all know that it also affects us. We have this, first of all, the physical aspects of it. We have the mouse arm, and we have the dry eyes, and we have, the neck, and we have, us being not in such a good shape because we are sitting too much, or I can just talk for myself, but I'm sitting too much. We also know that all these systems that we are using also cause a lot of stress on us, especially the system that doesn't work that well. And then we become more and more annoyed when we are using them. We also need to be more flexile, both flexible and mobile. So the devices and the work processes or the work support that we should have, the systems that we have in our work, they should support that so that we can be both flexible and mobile at the same time. So are we then becoming more efficient, as we discussed before? I was just making a quick counting of the systems that I use in my university. And in 2017, we have 5 new systems, as always. And we have, if we just take one example for storage, I was counting to 5, but I think it's probably up to 8 storage systems. And you can just imagine, and you know it yourself, what we go through when we try to find a document. Oh, in which project is it? And in that project, which storing system do we have? And what is the login for that? And where do I find it? And do we have 2 of them in this project? Yeah, that's true. We have SharePoint and OneDrive. Okay, I need to log into both of them. And then we go on like this. I would say I spend approximately at least 1 hour per day just looking for documents. And it might be that I'm very unstructured. I can admit to that. But I guess it's the same for a lot of us. And we have to learn these new systems on a yearly basis. So how efficient is that? When we constantly, now you will get this new system. Now you will get this new system. It will be so much more efficient. And now it will be so much more easy for you to do everything that you need to do. And then we need to report, and we need to put in all the numbers, and we need to do all these kinds of stuff. So I'm not so sure that it's always that efficient. We also see that since we are flexile, we can also work in different areas than we used to do. We have the home office. and we have the office, and we have the coffees, and we have the outdoor office. And the coffees is, of course, the cafeteria where you can have the office. And the office is when someone in their home rent out an office space. And then I have the home office, of course, when I take care of my children or something, and I do try to do some work as well, meanwhile. But with the digitalization, we also see that it comes a new labor market. There are new work tasks that comes up today that we didn't have a few years ago. And of course, crowdsourcing has been around for a while. Click farms have also been around for a while. But the new term that I come across just a few weeks ago is the desk sourcing. How many of you have heard of desk sourcing? Oh, there are some of you. Desk sourcing, that is when you put up a task where you want someone else to find the information for you. I want someone to order flowers for my husband, and then I put it up, and then I have a company delivering that service to me. But they do it, they just use the online services that are available. And I could have done it myself, but I use these kind of services instead. But what we also need to consider with this more self-employment that we are having today, or the gig economy that we call it, is, are we really free? Because a lot of people say, okay, yeah, but it's so free. When I am self-employed, I'm so free. But are we really? How much pay do you get when you're working in a crowdsourcing project, for instance? Or are we just having another type of slavery? Are we using people in poorer countries to help us for a very small amount of money? And what about their safety and their protection? Or will we have a labor market at all in the future? With the automation, the digitalization, the robotization, and the deep learning and everything, all these aspects, we know that a lot of jobs will disappear. So what will happen in the future? Who is going to do what? Are we going to have robots and automate all the jobs in warehouses, for instance? I think in the US, it's 8 million people who are working in the retail and as cashiers. And we know today how it is when we go to the shops, at least in Sweden. We have this, you do this scanning yourself and you pay it for yourself. So you don't need a cashier. And that is 8 million people in the US only. In the warehousing and transportation, it's 5 million people in the US only. Of course, it will be new jobs coming up when we automate everything and when we have our robots. Of course, it will be new work opportunities and new types of work that we didn't have before. But will it be the same amount as it is? That is the question. I guess that you all know about AlphaZero Go, when we have this new artificial intelligence that actually learns without human interaction, without learning from the humans. We only put in the base, I was not part of that, I can tell you. But they were only given the basic rules of the game Go, and then it took them 3 days to reach the level of the world class or of the world championships. 3 days for a system to learn what is kind of the accumulated knowledge for 2,500 years. So we can just imagine what will happen when we use artificial intelligence more and more. When we use artificial intelligence to diagnose health issues. And of course it will be good because we will get better diagnosis and people will have the opportunity to become more, to feel better and to increase the well-being among people. So of course there are always good sides, but also bad sides. And what about the legal aspects of artificial intelligence? Who are considering those? Should artificial intelligence and automation and robots, should they pay taxes? Can they own anything? Who own the knowledge that artificial intelligence render? Can they sign contracts? If we take it one step further, if we try to think of when we have everything automated or more or less everything, what would be the answer to these questions? Because if we don't tax, the robots or the automation, how are we then going to get income to public services? Because we know that we will probably not be employed and pay taxes. And if we look at the really ugly aspect of digitalization is the e-waste that we have today. We are producing enormous amounts of waste. And 90% of this waste is illegally dumped, usually to Africa and Asian countries. And in these African and Asian countries like Gambia or Vietnam, there are people or kids sitting there trying to recycle the things that might be of value. And this at the same time pollutes their water, their soil and everything, and themselves, of course. In the EU, we produce 8.7 million tons of e-waste on a yearly basis. And very little is recycled. So how can we then decrease the negative aspect and increase the positive aspects and consequences? Well, I would say that, okay, there are 4 aspects that we need to consider. We need to think of responsibility, anticipation, inclusion, and holism. We need to think of what could be the potential use in the future of this kind of technology. Who are responsible if something happens? And also to think of it from a holistic point of view. And by doing it, we should include, of course, the humans. And I work in the Botnia Living Lab, and there are more than 400 living labs around Europe that are more than eager to participate in this kind of activities. We want to be there to support open innovation processes, but to do it with the human and the end user in the very center of it. So we say that Living Lab is a collaborative and human-centric approach to digital innovation. We put the humans in the center, and we also focus on the value creation. How can we create value with new digital innovations? So we ensure that we are not only doing it for a company to make profit, but we're also doing it so that humans actually would make something better out of their life, or that we can do something more efficient or funnier. A lot of the things that we do today is not that fun either. So we have this basic aspect, a basic foundation of the Living Lab approach, where we say, okay, we want to have active user involvement. And when we say involvement, it's not only that we should hijack a user and say, okay, you are the user, now you represent them, and then you test this technology. It's not like that. When we talk about active user involvement, we talk about people who need to be engaged throughout the whole process. And they should be part of the process so that they feel that, okay, I have an impact, I have an influence, I have a possibility to actually make a change. We do that by having these co-creative processes. And we do it with many stakeholders. I was talking to Tracy earlier, and she was talking, oh yeah, we are now in processes where we want to engage different stakeholders. And that is what we do. We engage with public service, we engage with government, we engage with companies, end users, researchers, non-governmental organizations, I mean all these type of organizations, to come together and to see how can we create value for everyone. It's not only about the end users, it's not only about the companies, but for everyone who are part of this process. And we do this in the real life setting, so that is why we call us the Living Lab. Because we want to do it where people live, where they act, where they are active, and supporting whatever they are doing in their everyday life. So we put out the digital innovation in the prototype stage. We have it in the mountains in Sweden, or we have it in the city center, or we have it in Amsterdam. And we let people experiment with it, and we let people use it and give their input on how they want it to work. But we can also be there observing what people are doing and to see, okay, how can we find needs? How can we find new things, new opportunities for us? Because, I mean, most of you are developers and you know, okay, this is what is technically possible. But the people out there, the citizens in general, they have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, they don't know Internet of Things, they just, I don't know what that is, and I'm not sure that I'm going to use it. But then when you start talking about the value, and you start talking about the things that they can accomplish with it, then it becomes more interesting for them. So we say we build on 5 basic key principles. So we have the openness, and that is the window where the wind goes in and out from in this process. So we should be open, and many of you are working with open source, so you know what that means. I mean, we share, and then we get input. But we should also be open for the input that we get. So it's not only about us giving out, it's also about receiving something from the audience out there. It's about value creation. It's about creating a real value. It's not only about capturing the value. Because in many of the services we see today, we see that, okay, a lot of people are there, we are giving our data, and we are providing data, for instance, for a company. But who is really capturing the value, and who is creating the value? So here we want to have value creation. We want it to be a real value for them. We have the realism, that as I said, we are in the real world setting when we do this, and we want to do it as realistic as possible, because we can only say something as an end user, we can only say something about a device or new digital innovation if we have actually experienced it. Just giving input on a paper prototype, I mean, of course it can say something, but it's always better if we have used it. And then we have the sustainability aspect. I mean, it's not only about considering the generations today, but also the future generation. And if you see, she's also pregnant in that picture. So it's not only about today, it's also about tomorrow. As I said, we have 4 main key stakeholders. We have the end users, we have the researchers, we have the public sector, and we have companies that we work together. And for all these different stakeholders, we provide different kinds of values for them. And by doing this, we use this process that we have developed that we call the form it process. So we always start by exploring something new. How can we explore something? And then we co-create something together. We implement it in their everyday context, and then we evaluate it. And then we go round and round in this flower until we have a prototype and a system that is working so it can be implemented and spread out on a broader scale. So why then are living labs important? Well, we usually say 3 main reasons. It's, of course, of economical issues. If you involve end users, you will actually develop better products. And they will be more innovative. We've been working together with Ericsson. Now we know what happens to Ericsson, but a few years ago, we were working with Ericsson. And they also saw that when we worked in this way, we also had faster innovation processes. Because they knew directly, when they were taking a design decision or development decision, they knew what the end users would have said. So it was easier for them to make decisions, but also make it faster in their whole development process. We have the ethical aspects of it. Well, people should have a right to be part of the things that, and influence the things that will influence them. It's a democratic issue. It's the moral and ethical right thing to do. And of course, it's also a social issue. We can come together and we can develop things together and learn from each other and build cross-border collaboration. These are the projects that we have ongoing right now in Botnia. So it's the U for IoT project, that is a coordination and support action Horizon 2020, where we support large-scale pilots in IoT, and we support them with user engagement processes. And these large-scale pilots are, for instance, in smart cities, Internet of Food and Farming, or Internet of Things in Food and Farming. It's wearables, autonomous driving, and active aging. So these are the large-scale pilots where they want us to support them on how can we engage end users when we develop IoT for these kind of situations. We have the Privacy Flag project that is focusing on how we can make the internet and the applications that we have more privacy friendly, and how can we do this together as a crowd. In the UNALab project, we are focusing on nature-based solutions for smart cities, because it's not only about the technology. In some occasions, we need to also look at the nature that we have in the cities, and how we can make that, and how we can build up urban living labs where we can experiment with different kinds of nature-based solutions. And we also have sustainable and digital villages, because as you understand, I come from this not so crowded area. And we have a lot of villages. And in these villages, they have broadband. The broadband in Sweden is really, really good. But the services, when you are in these sparsely populated areas, are not that good. So we want to talk with the people in these villages and to see how can we help them with digital services that makes it possible for them to stay in the villages and also to have a fruitful and viable life when they live there. So, let's go out there and co-create a better world through ICT. Thank you.